Hey everyone, I'm Amethescent, and today I will be talking about the importance of good characters. In this video, I'll mostly be talking about a game called Sea of Stars that I recently finished that really made me think deeply about characters and how they influence the stories they take part in. However, even if you haven't played this game, the points I'll be discussing in this video can still be applied. But first, let me give you a brief, spoiler-free summary of the game's premise, in case you haven't played it. You play as one of two characters, Zale or Valir, who were born on the sun and moon solstices respectively. This event not only grants them sun and moon powers, but also sets them on a path to train as solstice warriors in order to rid the world of chaos-inducing dwellers. Sounds interesting enough, right? Like something that could work well with a variety of personalities and traits. However, playing and finishing this game left me feeling a bit disappointed in those aspects. I've noticed that many in the game's fandom, including myself, agree that Zale and Valir are rather bland. And Garl, another equally important character, is a bit better off than the other two, but I had some issues with him as well. There are a few other important characters that appear in the game, one of which being my favorite and the one I'm drawing in today's speed paint, but I won't be talking about any of them in this video, as I didn't find that they had too many glaring issues. What I will be talking about is what I would do to improve the three main characters. But before I do, I'll have to ask that you take what I say with a grain of salt. This is, after all, only my opinion. I have no kind of education or professional training in this area. I'm simply a girl who loves designing characters and wants to get better at it. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. One of the things I would often think to myself while playing Sea of Stars was that there were only two notable things about Zale and Valir, that they are solstice warriors and Garl. And that's pretty much it. Those were the only two things I could use to describe them. It's almost like they had no sense of self. There were certainly hints of a personality throughout the game, but it wasn't enough. Their characters could have easily been combined into one, and I'm not sure if there would be too much of a difference in the overall story. So what would I do to fix this? Let's start with Valir. I showed these images to a few people I know and asked them what they thought Valir's character would be like, based solely on what they saw. The general consensus between them was that Valir appeared to be a character who was very confident and firm about her decisions. Someone who's controlled, composed, and strategic. Someone who's resilient and emotionally reserved. All things I agree with as well. Furthermore, her name, Valir, means to be strong or healthy, and her title is Lunar Monk. So, let's see what can be done with all of this. Let's say that Valir is now a rather reserved girl, her emotions always hidden by a mask of cool confidence. She only speaks when absolutely necessary, preferring to observe first and act later. And I think this aligns well with her being a monk based on my brief research that seems to imply that monks live very disciplined lives focused on a chosen deity or philosophy. Please note that if she were my own character, and I had more time, I would most likely do deeper research on monk culture. After all, when designing a character, it's important to know at least a little about the things that inspired the character or that the character was based on. But back to Valir. Perhaps while training, Valir would have spent a lot of her time meditating and connecting with her lunar powers, which would explain why she would be more reserved and contemplative in nature. And perhaps because of this, her lunar powers come more naturally. During bits and pieces of the gameplay, Valir shows inklings of being a bit more hot-headed. So maybe we could incorporate that as well. Perhaps Valir is naturally more strong-willed and hot-headed, and the meditation is what helps her to balance that. Though, at times, it's not enough, and her emotions break through. Then there's Zale. Based on these images, the agreement was that Zale looked like a confident and physically strong person, who appeared to be combat-oriented. They agreed that Zale looked more like an act-first, think-later type of guy, who is caring and charismatic. And I agree with most of these as well. And his name, well, all I could find for the meaning of his name was that it had to do with the strength of the sea, which I'm not sure how that would fit in with Zale since his power is all about the sun, and connections to the sea is more of a moon thing. But that's okay. Names don't necessarily have to relate to the character, but it can certainly help. And then his title is Solar Blade Dancer. So let's say Zale is indeed more of a warm and caring guy, someone with a better grasp on emotions than Valir is. One of the people who saw the images thought that Zale looked like he could be a bit of a perfectionist, and I like that. So let's say that Zale is a perfectionist. He doesn't connect as easily to his solar powers as Valir does to her lunar powers, and he's too impatient for meditation. So instead, he trains a lot and becomes a perfectionist, and this training helps him to master his solar powers, as well as becoming a master of speed and agility, which would be required of a blade dancer. Also, there was a cutscene in the game where Zale was fishing, so maybe we can incorporate that as well. I don't recall there being many fishing spots at the academy where the two trained. However, perhaps Zale read a lot about fishing while he was there. Then, when he finally left the academy and tried fishing for the first time, he discovered he really liked it. It was calming and slow, a vast difference compared to the speed and agility that comes with his usual fighting style. It could possibly even be a way to take his mind off of things or let his thoughts flow free. I know that something like he likes fishing may seem like something small or unimportant, but the small things are just as important as the big things. They give a character more depth. One of the biggest missed opportunities in the game was the relationship between Zale and Valir. These two trained together in Zenith Academy for 10 years, isolated from the rest of the world, with only their mentor and occasional role models for company. You'd expect such an experience to forge a strong sibling-like bond. Instead, their interactions feel about as meaningful as their conversations with NPCs. If I were to improve this, I'd give Zale and Valir a dynamic that truly reflects their shared past, one where they trust and understand each other deeply, pick up on unspoken emotions, and share moments that highlight their bond. Their relationship should be the emotional anchor of the story, giving players a reason to root for them beyond their mission. Finally, we have Garl. Showing the images once again, people agree that Garl appeared to be the strong and dependable type. The kind of person who's caring, down to earth, and very approachable. That he had a fighting spirit and was pretty skilled in the art of cooking. I couldn't find anything on the meaning of his name, because all my Google searches just showed me results for girl name meanings, not Garl name meanings. Oh well. And, well, Garl is a different case than Zale and Valir. Different in the fact that he does actually have a personality, likes, dislikes, etc. So the problem I have with him isn't so much that he's a blank character, but that he's a Mary Sue. What is a Mary Sue, you may ask? Well, a Mary Sue is a term used to describe a fictional character, usually female, who's seen as too perfect and almost boring for lack of flaws, with the male equivalent often being referred to as Gary Stu. You see, Garl is a lot of the things you may assume from his appearance alone. He's caring, strong, dependable, and skilled in cooking. But he's also lovable, trustworthy, sociable, friendly, befriends everyone, and everyone always likes him and is influenced by the things he does and says. See where I'm getting at? I don't actually remember him making any poor choices or doing anything wrong, which is kind of boring and not all that realistic. I mean, he's not a terribly written character. I did actually like him in the beginning portion of the game. He's a fun guy. But as I continued playing, I started to realize something. He's always taking the spotlight. Always the one talking and almost always the one making active decisions. Almost like he's the main character. And it's not that I want Garl to not be a main character. I do, but I think he should be of equal importance to Zale and Valir. And I'm not just pulling this out of nowhere, because I too have a Mary Sue character, or I did. Meet Amika, or rather, meet old Amika. She was my Mary Sue. Absolutely perfect in every way possible. Effortlessly beautiful, loved by all, always right, but never allowed to do anything even remotely embarrassing or unattractive. I know, it's shameful. But really, it isn't. Because a lot of writers fall for this. Our characters are our babies after all, and we don't want them to be hurt or disliked. So we make them perfect. But really, we're just hurting them. I can't blame someone for making a Mary Sue character, as it is such an easy trap to fall into, especially if you want to make your character lovable. So what do? We learn. So I changed Amika's character to make her less Mary Sue-ish, and I'll try to do the same with Garl. So how would I rewrite him? Well, I wouldn't. Not completely, at least. Garl has a pretty good foundation already, and he's already loved by a lot of fans of the game. The most important thing I think we have to do is give Garl a flaw, and I think we can build on his current personality to do so. In this game, Garl is an optimistic and kind character, always looking on the bright side. But let's crank this up to the max. After all, a good trait can just as easily be a bad one as well. Let's make him too optimistic, almost naively so, in a way that makes him almost blindly trust anyone he comes across. And then let's give him a conflict, make him wrong about something. Maybe he trusts someone wholeheartedly and convinces his friends to trust that person too, only for that to backfire. Perhaps Garl is the type of person who wants to stop and help everyone that asks for help, but Zale and Valir aren't. Zale and Valir instead want to remain focused on their mission and journey, but at every cry for help, Garl insists that they provide their assistance. But maybe one time this backfires. Maybe one time while helping a poor soul, they take advantage of the group and betray them, maybe even hurt them. And Garl realizes that it was his blind trust and boundless optimism that led them to this outcome. Maybe for a while, Garl becomes a shell of his former self as guilt overcomes him. He realizes that people don't always have your best intentions at heart. He questions his nature, whether or not that is who he should be. But then, Zale and Valir confront him, but instead of being upset with him, they empathize with him and assure him that his trusting and kind nature aren't a bad thing. That his personality, that him as a person, bring joy and life into their worlds. And this brings Garl out of his funk, and he realizes that it's not bad to be optimistic and trusting. He just needs to be a bit more cautious about it. That certainly gives Garl a lot more depth, doesn't it? Or, at least, I think so. It also gives him an arc in which he learns and grows from the outcome. It also helps Zale and Valir to grow too, as they realize that they shouldn't just focus on the task at hand. That, as Solstice Warriors, they have the ability to help people, no matter how big or how small their problems may be. From this arc, Zale and Valir become more selfless people, and Garl learns a valuable lesson. This is what I find so interesting about character design. Thinking about characters, their flaws, their backgrounds, what choices they make, and how that affects them for better or for worse. What are the things that make them who they are? What things challenge them? What keeps them up at night? What motivates them? These are the things you have to think about when making a captivating character, and these are the things I thought about while making this video. But anyway, that's just my opinion and take on things. Again, let me reiterate that I am by no means a professional, so take everything I said with a grain of salt. I don't mean to insult or degrade the creator's original ideas or intent with these three characters. So, what do you think? If you played the game and have your own opinions that are similar or different from mine, feel free to let me know in the comments. Do you think my ruminations have any merit? And I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching, and please consider liking and subscribing to see more of my content. Take care and farewell.